Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to another awesome episode of Beats and Vows right here on Beat District Radio and Phat Mixx Productions YouTube TV. Thank y'all for tuning in once again. You already know how we do it on Beats and Vows. We talk everything weddings, everything in the wedding professional field, and I get a chance to talk to some awesome people, some of my great friends that I've seen across the St. Louis metropolitan area, and we get a chance to talk shop in a sense. It talks about some tips and some tricks, not only for vendors, but also for couples that are looking to getting married or people that knows about couples that's looking to get married. So this is the place that everybody wants to be. And the biggest person that I am so happy that she's here. Look, I met her so long ago. I would say it's been about a few years now when I met Michelle. So everybody, welcome to the podcast, Michelle. Yeah. Don't worry, everybody's in the background clapping for you. Yeah. Yeah, she has a whole fan base. Y'all just didn't even know that she brought with her and things like
kind
that.
Of a big deal.
She's kind of a big deal. So, of course, it feels like I'm interviewing everybody with different color hair now.
I mean, only the cool kids have not natural hair.
Kids. All right, I need to dye the beard some color.
I mean, I can help you.
Blue.
I'm kind of an expert now.
Yeah, you are. So how long have you had the color and what colors have you had so far?
I mean, I have been coloring my hair since I was, I think, probably 17 or 18. I've been some shade of pink or purple for probably 10 years. If I were to count back, yeah. I always did red. I called it Little Mermaid red or Fire Truck red, super, super bright, but it would always fade, and everybody did that. And one day I was just kind of I want to do something different. And I walked down the aisle at Walmart, and that was kind of when it was first kind of coming out. Not, now you walk down the street and you see 5 people with different colors,
Easily.
But it was just kind of starting to come out, and I was like, well, purple's close to red. Red looks good, so I would imagine purple will look good. So I did it, and I could not go anywhere without somebody saying, oh my God, I love your hair. At that point, I was transferring to Jacksonville, Florida for the job that I was working at the time. And my dad came with me to go look for apartments and stuff before I moved. And I remember after one of the days we were out, he's like, so many people talk about your hair. A total stranger. It's just you walk by and they're like, oh my God, I love your hair. He's like, it's so bizarre. How many people feel they need to say, I love your hair.
For real. Right.
So yeah, I'm like, it works. People like it. I like it.
Hey,
let's do it.
Let's do it. And it makes you stand out because we didn't get it. We introduced you, but we didn't for real introduce you. She is an awesome wedding photographer, and I've seen her work, especially online, Instagram, and things like that. Some of your photos and everything. And we actually just recently we had a chance to work with each other for the very first time, and we're going to get into that.
Yeah.
But
oh boy.
Oh boy.
It was a fun one.
So let's talk about just a journey. How did you become a photographer? Was you just doing Polaroids first?
Not quite Polaroids, but disposable cameras. Yeah,
you're right. Exactly.
It's funny because looking back, when I tell this story now, my whole life, all of the signs were pointing this direction. But it took me until I was 35 years old to put them all together and be like, oh, maybe I should do this for a living.
Why not?
So I started my business in the fall. Whoa. In the fall of 2018. But I had my first camera. Oh gosh, I was probably 18 or 19. I was working in the Walgreens 1 hour photo lab. This is before digital kind of took over and film was still a thing.
Yeah.
It's a thing now again. That's how I'm oh my God, I'm so old. It's gone away and come back. So working in the 1 hour photo lab, just seeing people come and like pick up their photos, like from a Disney trip or, this is back in the day when there were disposable cameras on every table at a wedding. Yes, I despise them to this day for that reason. Has nothing to do with me being a photographer. It's all my PTSD from working at Walgreens. It kind of started there and seeing like how much joy it brought to people. And like, photos are so important in our lives. Like, now that we all have literal cameras in our pockets all the time now, like, we're taking pictures of everything because we want to remember, right? Like it's, such a big part of our lives. So I just really liked like being able to help create that for people. Like they were always so happy. Like more often than not, like they wouldn't even walk away from the counter before they were ripping that envelope open to look through everything.
We love doing that.
And they loved telling the stories and, that kind of thing. So that's kind of where it started. But as a kid, like I said, like there was little things that kind of like helped point me in that direction. So thinking back, like I always loved looking through family photo albums, watching home movies, like just the nostalgia. Like I just really loved doing that. Like most people feel like it's kind of a form of torture to sit there and like watch somebody's home movies or flip through their photo albums. I love it. I would sit there for hours and look through people's pictures. Like it's in my blood, I guess. I don't know. So that was always a big thing. And like as a kid, when I would make gifts for like Mother's Day or my dad or birthdays or whatever, it always revolved around photos somehow, like whether it was a slideshow I put together or, there was one year for, I think it was my mom's birthday or Mother's Day. My dad helped me get 12 different frames, like collage frames.
Oh, yeah.
And I made one for every month. So in our front hall, she could switch out like, okay, here's the April frame, here's the May frame. Like, so I did all that. So it was just always like my go-to was photos. And we also had a tradition at Christmas that one of our Christmas gifts was a calendar for the next year. Because again, I'm old and calendars were a thing then.
I want to bring calendars back.
Yeah. So we always got a calendar, and I always requested an Ann Geddes calendar, which is a photographer that infamously did like babies in flower pots and like babies in costumes. Like if you saw one of the photos, you would know exactly what I'm talking about. But she was kind of like the first big like newborn photographer that put babies in weird things. Kind of created like this whole thing. But that was always the calendar I wanted. So like I said, it was all these little things that just kind of like
was grabbing you
were
towards
there
it.
and like pushing me that direction. So I ended up getting my first camera while I was working at Walgreens. And just like most of us, like, just started with families and friends. And, just I was that friend with the camera that I, tell people not to use for their weddings now. But I had a friend who got married and was like, oh, I have a friend with a camera.
Yeah.
So, we all start there. It's kind
and
of funny.
it's a journey, but at the same time, once we become professionals at it, it's a struggle to hear, right? When you hear it, and it's like we want to sympathize that somebody has to start somewhere and somebody has to hire them, right? But at the same time, he's like, do you really want to do that for your wedding?
Like, looking back, I'm so thankful that I did not screw that up.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, like my first wedding, $300. It was a friend, it was just like a backyard kind of thing. And I was invited and I was like, oh, well, if you're not going to have a photographer, like I can bring I'm the friend with the nice camera. Like I can bring my camera. And they were like, oh my gosh, that would be great. Like, we'll pay you. So I got paid a whopping $300.
Hey.
Money's money. Especially when I was just going to be a guest, to get paid to be a guest.
Yeah.
But I would say an hour or two into it, I was like, this is it. This is what I need to do with my life. I was kind of in a weird spot, mentally. I had been in retail management for going on almost 20 years. And,
what store? Was it still Walgreens or?
No, that was the start, Walgreens, and then I went to
Just curious. Makes
Well,
no difference.
this one will make a lot of sense for anybody that knows me. I went to Justice, which is a little girl's clothing store.
Okay.
It's not. Well, it is, but it isn't a thing. It's not a store anymore, but Walmart carries it, I guess. But that's kind of, I think, where a lot of the color and sparkles, like, if you're not watching, I'm wearing a sequin top and I have hot pink hair, and like, it was like the perfect job for me. So I was a store manager for them for a couple years, and then I went to IKEA. And I actually opened the store here in St. Louis as a manager.
Get out of here.
Yeah. Helped put together not every piece, but helped put together all of the furniture in that building before grand opening. I still have nightmares about it.
Oh, my bad. Because I had some stuff I need to put together at some point.
I won't touch it. Nope.
I hate doing it.
Yeah, it's awful.
I'm not that. When it comes to people asking me, it's not like I can't do it.
Right.
I just don't like
Yeah,
doing
exactly.
it. I don't want a tool belt. I have it all.
Right.
And despise it.
Yes.
Every single second.
Same. I got like a lifetime's worth of IKEA furniture building in that 2-week period. I remember putting together it was an 8-drawer dresser thing, and it required 2 people. So me and one of the other sales managers were putting it together, and it was like we were a married couple, like yelling at each other and like, no, that's not how it goes. Like, and I was like, now I understand how IKEA like breaks people up.
Yeah, that's facts, right? Just for putting stuff together. So we went from Walgreens to IKEA, Justice and things like that, and of course, like you said, you start like, this is going to be a thing. This is going to be a thing. You did your friend's $300 backyard wedding.
Yeah. And that was the day that I was kind of like, I was in that, like, what am I going to do with my life? Like, I loved being in retail until I did it. Like, I like to think I was there about 5 years too long. 15 years is kind of like the peak of, I loved what I was doing, and then it kind of all went downhill from there. So I really, I had moved to Jacksonville, Florida with IKEA at one point to open a store down there. Ended up coming back to St. Louis about a year later because I just wasn't happy there. I didn't know what I wanted to do, like just all these things. So I call it was kind of like a quarter life crisis, or a third life crisis. Wasn't quite midlife. It was a little early.
20.
Yeah.
20, you talking about midlife crisis.
Hey, I was like 35. So yeah, I was like, I don't know what I want to do when I grow up, that kind of thing. Yeah. And then I did this wedding, and I was like, this is it. This is what I need to do. So from that point, that was in September of 2018, and November of 2018 is when I officially filed my LLC and made it a thing.
You just went balls to the walls with it.
Yeah,
I
took I went about 2 months of research, and I'm a very have to be prepared, have to know all the things before I do something. So I took some classes through the Small Business Association of Illinois, because I was living in Illinois at the time, which was phenomenal for anybody that wants to start a business. Look up your local SBA. They're it's a free service. 100%. They will help 100%. You. It was one of the best things I did. So yeah, I, did all the research, and then I fortunately was able to pretty quickly hook up with some photographers that let me, just kind of let me, be their second and follow along and, learn the ways of a real wedding, not a $300 backyard wedding. But one of those photographers was Abby Rudolph with Abby Takes Pictures.
Okay, Abby. Okay.
Yeah, she really took me under her wing, and she would always say, she throws the doors open of her business and literally teaches you everything. And I owe a lot to her, because that's how I learned to really
That's awesome.
Serve my customers in the best way, but also run a business, because those are two very different things.
Yeah.
Most photographers, when they're like, oh, I'm going to start, my business, I'm going to be a photographer, only 10% of what we do is actual photography. Everything else, the business side and the, all of that. It's we're really only pushing the button on the camera 10% of the time.
That's it. Technically, I guarantee that's probably the easy part for you guys.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I guarantee.
Oh yeah.
And it's looking at it.
I'm kind of a business junkie, so being in retail, I was a store manager in most of the positions, so I was running businesses. They were just other people's. But most creatives, they don't really have the mental, like, I don't know, mental whatever for the business side.
Yeah,
like
for
it's
sure.
just
They're
it's
not
just too
busy
much and
savvy.
it's not organized and
Yep.
like they just would rather be creative and that kind of thing. And
Sometimes that's my story.
yeah.
Sometimes I'm like, okay, I got to really back now.
yeah, so for some reason, somehow I have a little bit of both. So like the business stuff is fun to me. Like I really enjoy it because it's what I've done for so long.
Mm-hmm.
But then I also get to be creative and, you know, take the epic photos and like do all that kind of stuff. So I feel like that's one of the advantages that I have, like, is that I do love doing both sides of it.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it was great. I worked with her through COVID, which was a
Because
learning.
technically, when I hear 18 and 19, I think of, as you want to say, pre-COVID entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
right? Where I always, my biggest thing is, how did you guys do it,
Yeah.
right? When I say pre-COVID, like you just got started,
Yeah.
right? Because even when I started DJ, it's been like a long time ago, and I was already up and running before COVID.
Yeah.
So it was just a transition. So how did that affect you on to keep it pushing, you know,
Yeah. So
during COVID and past COVID?
I was actually really fortunate. I think if I had started my business any earlier, it may have affected me a lot more than it did. But because I was so new, I didn't have anything really booked of my own because
makes
I was
sense.
working with Abby.
Okay.
So, you know, I personally didn't have to worry about like pushing dates or moving things around or anything because I just didn't have clients yet,
Got
you know.
you. That makes
so,
sense.
But I got to see it through Abby's business, you know, and kind of how she was navigating it. And like I said, it was an amazing learning experience. I was with her, worked with her for about 2 years, like kind of as her main, like second shooter, her assistant on shoots. I did all of her bookkeeping and office stuff for a while. Like I did a little bit of everything. So, so yeah, in 2021, which was the chaos of 2 years worth of weddings trying to book in like a 6-month period. That was the first year that I started doing like wedding shows, which are kind of my bread and butter now. I love them. Love wedding shows. Yeah, and I started filling my calendar. Like I had, 2 years of experience under my belt as a second shooter. I'd done a few of my own weddings at that point, but that was the first year that it was really like, okay, MJP, we're doing this. Like, here we go.
Now, which other wedding shows? Because of course, we see each other Off-White all the time. So, what other wedding shows do you participate in?
So I typically do the one, which
I've been thinking about the one.
it's great.
It is.
It's great.
Is it a big one?
Yes.
No, no pun intended.
It's the big one. No, they used to be the Pink Bride. And
Okay, that makes sense. Okay.
Rhonda Favor,
Yes.
photographer, she bought the business and rebranded it, and they have done such an amazing job with it. Like, they're so great. They're so great. Like, their shows, with her being an actual vendor, like, she gets it. Like, she knows what we need from our perspective, knows what the couples want. Like, it's a really great show.
Okay.
So I've been doing that for a couple years. I filmed Off-White in the past. St. Louis Bride Magazine, they have a show in January, February, kind of changes every year, but The Wedding Connection, I do that one. I'm usually a sponsor for that one.
Okay.
And then, just little ones here and there as they pop up. Venue open houses. Like I was just at the new venue in Columbia, Illinois, Old Monroe's
I heard
Bourbon
about Old
Ballroom.
Monroe's.
Oh my God, it's so pretty.
Yeah, I gotta.
Oh
we'll
my
be
gosh.
talking on how I can link up with them.
Oh my gosh. Well,
sure.
somehow, some way, I was at the open house for clients. I would just right place, right time, I guess.
Nice.
Then I emailed her and she's like, yeah, sure,
Yeah,
come on.
sure.
Like, but yeah, so I was there last week and oh my gosh, so beautiful. So, I just can't even
Really?
when you see photos and videos of this place, it does not do it justice. Like, you have to see it in person.
Speaking of which you're saying there, what are some? If you could give me your top, this is gonna be rough.
Oh boy.
Top 5
Venues.
in the St. Louis metro area.
Well, I'm gonna say that
Take
one.
pictures at.
Even though I haven't taken any photos there yet, I will say Old Monroe will be, or Bourbon Ballroom is what it's called.
Okay.
Because like it's just, gosh, it's gorgeous. For taking photos, let's see. This is tough. I really love Mason de Lock.
Ooh.
Out at Pacific or in that general area. I really love Haw Valley.
I heard about
really
Haw
pretty.
Valley.
I love Wild Carrot down here in the city.
Who doesn't?
Right? One of my favorite photos, or actually a couple of my favorite photos I've ever taken were at Wild Carrot. I'm kind of, like, everybody knows my champagne photo of my couple, like, spraying champagne. That was at Wild Carrot. That's an award-winning photo. Thank you very much. I lost count. What is that? 3, 4, 3. Oh gosh. I shot at Jefferson Underground for the first time this past fall. That's a really neat venue. It's very different. It's in the city. I assume you've probably been there.
I haven't.
Jefferson Underground. Yeah, something like that. Jefferson Underground. For some reason in my head, I'm thinking of like Mississippi Underground, but isn't that a club?
Yes.
Okay. I was like, I'm getting my places mixed up. But yeah, it's a really, really neat, and I feel it's kind of underrated. Like, it's not like one of the more popular ones.
I love those.
Yeah, it's so cool. It's got this giant outdoor patio that's like up on the roof of the building, and it's so cool. Gosh, there really is so many, like, venue owners are gonna be watching this to be like, oh, that Michelle didn't mention us. She works here all the time.
I told her the top 5. That's why. And so,
I really this is gonna sound like really cliche and like scripted, but I mean, I can make something out of any venue. Like, it really only takes, maybe 6 feet of good space for me to do something, and with my like skills in lighting and things like that, it just multiplies, the possibilities. So I actually, at that same couple, the champagne photo, I have another photo that I took of them during sunset. So Wild Carrot being in the city, there's not a lot of like wide open spaces to see the sunset, like, because there's tree. I mean, it's right by the botanical garden, so like there's trees and there's buildings and there's the highway, and like it's kind of hard. So I knew that I wanted to get a sunset photo for them. So the day before the wedding, I went and kind of drove around that time to see where it was going to be, like what my best shot was going to be, because I didn't want to have to waste time, that day. So as I'm driving around, I'm driving it's on my left, and I'm driving like about to go underneath the highway because 44 runs right behind. Okay. And I look over, and there's this like cotton candy pink and purple sunset sky, like right over the highway. Like, there's this big opening, and the side of the highway is covered in like wildflowers because it's by the botanical garden. It's like one of those like protected wildflower fields or whatever.
Okay.
So I 100% took my couple the next night and put them on the side of Highway 44.
Okay.
And took this amazing photo. And like, I love telling that story. It's one of the prints that I have that I bring to wedding shows.
Yeah.
And I love telling the story behind it. Like, see this beautiful photo with all these beautiful flowers and this sunset, like they're blocking a highway sign that says grand next exit. There's semi trucks flying 70 miles an hour down that road, like 20 feet away from them.
So you have to first of all, you have to send me the photo, because when I release it on YouTube, I'm gonna
I can absolutely do that
here. That she's talking about the champagne, right?
Some here I'm gonna somewhere.
So no, that's dope. So with that being said, let's talk about prep. I don't think a lot of couples and potential vendors, but especially couples, know the work that goes into it. Like I said, we worked just recently at a wedding where I know you was a second shooter, right? But you can tell the prep that you guys put into it, right?
Yeah. I mean, Bryson and I had a phone call ahead of time to talk about it. And the prep time. So kind of going back to what I was saying about how like the actual shooting is only maybe 10% of it.
Sure.
I would say every wedding that I do, I probably have about 50 hours total invested in it. So only maybe 10 of that is actually like with the couple taking photos. then there's 40 hours of the prep calls, the consultation, the editing, all of that kind of stuff. So I'm very much the type that likes to be prepared. I can go with the flow, like that 20 years of retail really helps because, I'm able to, kind of make decisions on a dime and I'm really good at hurting people.
Yeah. And that's the thing about it because so I'm type A too when it comes to help preparing and especially for the day of. And I can tell you the same way where, especially talking about in retail and business, where you want everything planned out.
Yep.
And then you have your old snap moments where you're like, okay, if something happens right here and there, I still know what to do.
Yeah, I have a plan B, C, D, E, and F.
Yeah. So what does that process look like for you though?
Yeah, so when a couple books me, we usually start with an engagement session. So I always have a planning call with them about the engagement session where I really get to know them, like who they are, what they like to do. I always tell them, like during consultations, I talk about how, engagement sessions, they're included in all of my packages because it's a great way for us to get to know each other better before the wedding day. They get to kind of, shake some of those nerves off. People don't typically like being in front of a camera and they feel weird about it. So, they get to kind of practice, but then I also get to see like what their vibe is and like what they like, what they don't like. Are they more touchy-feely, lovey-dovey? Are they more like goofy, let's push each other around? Like, that way in the wedding day, I'm not trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
I have that under control. So I kind of start to figure out who they are and what they like and that kind of thing with the engagement session. And then a few weeks before the actual wedding, we'll have like a timeline call where either I'll help them put together the timeline if they haven't already, or we'll go over like if their coordinator or somebody, whatever timeline exists, we just kind of go through that and establish, like if they want to do a first look, if they want to do a champagne photo, if they, like that kind of stuff. So I, we'll talk through the whole day and kind of what it looks like, what they want. It's really important to me to give my couples what they want. Some are, more, we want all the photos we can get. We don't care about cocktail hour. We don't care about, like being there for the party or like we want as many photos as we can get. And then there's other couples that are like, we want the photos, but we want to be with our people. Like we want to go to cocktail hour. We want to be on the dance floor. Like, so I'm able to kind of talk through, what their expectations are and help them figure that out with their timeline. If they want to be with their people, okay, well, let's talk about doing a first look and then getting all of your photos knocked out beforehand. That way, once the events start, I don't have to whisk you away. Like, I don't have to take you away from everything. That kind of thing. So just talking through, the different options and that kind of thing. And then, I always like to ask certain questions beforehand, like, are there any special family circumstances I should know about? Should I not put mom and dad on the same side of a photo?
I knew where you was going with it. I knew where you was going with this.
Learned that the hard way. One of the first weddings I did. That was awkward. So I started asking. But just things like, are there any special photo requests? Like, I fully believe that if you're hiring a professional photographer, you should not have to provide them a shot by shot list. Online things like The Knot and Wedding Wire or whatever, they give, all these articles about like, here's a checklist for all these things and here's a list to give your photographer. If you have to give your photographer a list that has first kiss, walking down the aisle, photos of the rings, bride and groom together. Like, if you have to give them a list that says that, you shouldn't be hiring them. Right. Or you should be getting that shit for free.
Yeah, for sure.
Sorry, I cursed.
No, you're good. You're good.
So like, I don't need a shot by shot list. Obviously, that's all up here. But, if there's special requests, like, we would love to get a generations photo. My grandma, my mom, me and my sister and my niece. Or sometimes I get requests for like recreations of photos. So, maybe mom and dad, like last year I had a wedding that we were at mom and dad's house getting ready. And I noticed their wedding picture on the wall, and it was at Tower Grove Park. And we were going to Tower Grove Park. So I snapped a picture of it with my phone, and we did basically the same, like in the same spot with the couple. So like now they have like the same photo, so yeah, just I like to talk about all of that stuff ahead of time, because that way on the wedding day, I know I have the plan and I'm not asking that bride and groom like, okay, well, what do you guys want to do? Like taking them out of the moment. I want them to enjoy themselves. I want them to know that, I've got it under control. We have a plan. Like,
yeah,
we're all good.
Because I'm not usually around. I'm never around.
Yeah.
I'm never around, but
you can come carry my bags someday. And
right. Just to see everything that happens when I'm not working. But I'm not usually around, but you can tell when, and it is what it is with some photographers, where you can tell the couple is just drained.
Yeah.
Right. By the time they get back from, to get introduced, they're just like, we're just ready.
Yeah.
They're just drained.
I've had a few moments where, they'll just kind of look at me and be like, can we be done?
Yeah.
And it's usually because it's been a long day up to that point. Maybe they had an early ceremony and a lot of time in between. So we spent a lot of time taking pictures. It's hot outside. They're hungry. So I try to keep that in consideration too. Like I've had a few where that has been the case. Like we've done a ceremony early in the morning, had a lot of time in between. Like it's a photographer's dream, to have 4 hours of time to take all these photos. I usually get maybe an hour to 90 minutes. But I quickly learned that just because I appreciate having that time, bride and groom don't necessarily want to take photos that entire time. So, I started again, because I know the couple by this point, like what they're into. I can suggest, how about for these first 2 hours, we'll knock photos out. And then, depending on the time, you guys can go hang out at this bar or this place, or get to the venue so you guys can just chill, or like things like that. So that's really why getting to know the couple is so important, because if they are really wanting to prioritize time with their people, and they're they want to take advantage of that party bus and that kind of thing, I can make sure that I'm doing my job and getting the photos, but also not taking away from that experience, because it's our wedding day. It's so much more than just taking pictures, which actually that was convenient. That's like my tagline, Michelle Jahns photography, because capturing your best day ever is more than just taking photos.
Oh, I like it.
That was
Michelle.
Perfect. Plugging myself without even realizing it.
Look. Sounding air horns for that one. Look at how important you think it is for a first look versus not taking any pictures and walking down the aisle for the first time. What do you?
So
if you can take, I want you to use not only your photographer mind, but also your non-photographer mind, if that makes sense, right?
Yes. So most photographers, obviously we lean towards the first look just because it's...
I do too, by the way.
Because it gives us more time and things like that. But I also totally understand like the couple's perspective of seeing each other for the first time in the aisle. Like it's that traditional, like what you grew up envisioning, your wedding day was going to be like. And, some people are pretty set. Like if they're going to do one or the other, they usually know, like we're not doing a first look, or we are doing a first look. People that are on the fence usually end up going with the first look. And I usually encourage that because, like I said, it gives us more time. Things are a little bit more laid back. I've had a few where they wanted to do it down the aisle. That's where the logistics come in. So if you're really set on having that traditional seeing each other down the aisle for the first time, but you want to make sure that you're getting, couples photos and whole wedding party photos, obviously we can do things before the ceremony on each side. So, like the bride with her girls and the groom with his guys and things like that. But any photos that have the bride and groom in it together, so photos of themselves, the whole wedding party, all of the family photos, those have to be after the ceremony.
Yeah, for sure.
Which means you have to schedule time for that. I've had one wedding where I was given 60 minutes to do all of that it was during cocktail hour, between the ceremony and the reception, because that ceremony time could not be moved. Like it had to happen at this time. And we had to make it work. And then of course it rained that day.
Did you have to go somewhere else? Was it off-site?
No, fortunately we were at one location. Yeah, oh my gosh, can you imagine? be like, you're not getting photos, sorry.
Yeah.
Or you're not going to your party, sorry.
That's the worst. I definitely do encourage the first look. You know, I tell people, I'm like, if you did a photo shoot by yourself, usually it's 30 minutes to an hour.
Yeah.
So add a second person, which is your spouse, and then add, 15 to 20 other people potentially, right?
Yeah.
So, but once again, I agree with you when they say they're stuck either way.
Yeah.
It's sometimes it's no gray. It's a gray area sometimes, but
I feel like it's becoming more accepted. Like, not that it wasn't accepted, but
what's more the trend though? Outside of traditional, traditional is the trend, or
I
is
don't
it
know
going
that I would
somewhere
call
else?
it a trend. I think it's just, at this point, I think it's just one of those like either ors. I wouldn't really call it a trend necessarily. Something that is more trend-y is a form of it, which I think is kind of a good compromise for some people, which is like private vows and things like that. So I've had several couples that have chosen to do the first look, but during the first look, they exchange private vows. So it's just the two of them. They're not, pouring their hearts out in front of all these people. It's kind of uncomfortable for some folks. And then during the ceremony, they do the standard vows, So that's kind of a good, like, when people are on the fence, that's some of the stuff I talk them through is like, okay, well, these are some options. If, you want to make it, special, where it's, you still get that coming down the aisle feeling, like, we can make it a whole thing. Like, you can have your Belle from Beauty and the Beast moment where you come down the stairs and he sees you, and like, we can make it a thing. But yeah, so I think that something like that. The other thing I'm seeing, not really related to first look, but with couples spending time together, the first look, obviously, you get to see each other earlier in the day, so you're spending most of the day together. Whereas if you choose not to, half that day, you're not with your spouse. So, I mean, some people are okay with that. Some people don't think about it.
Yeah.
And then they're like, well, we didn't really get to see each other that much, but one of the other things that I have seen that I love, and I've been telling all my couples about, is just to give them some time with just the two of them, because they're literally surrounded by people all day long.
The whole time.
Everybody. So when we do couple portraits, I like to shoo everybody away. Like, okay, bridal party, your release, go enjoy cocktail hour. We're going to do some photos of the bride and groom. I mean, obviously it's with me, but they get to be with themselves. They're not surrounded. They get to talk and be like, oh my gosh, during, when we were getting ready, the dog jumped into the toilet, or, whatever. Like, they get to, share about their day that they weren't together. That didn't happen. That just randomly popped into my head.
Okay. I'm like, you had a dog that jumped in the toilet before a wedding?
That was my brain just going wild places.
We good.
It's probably something my dog would do. But yeah, so one of the things that I'm seeing that I love is during cocktail hour, they're going and eating dinner by themselves. So they're eating, which is good, because a lot of them don't. And then
look,
it's a mess.
Our couple that we just had, they were scarfing down there.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Remember we were
talking about,
we're like,
they were eating like they was in the military.
Literally shoveling it in. Like literally. Whoops.
Yep, you good. But I was like, but it made sense, like, because we got to eat. And I encourage,
we were,
I always
like
encourage
an hour behind at that point.
My goodness.
It's good. It happens.
So with that being said, we're this is slight details, but not too many details, right? When it comes to weddings, who do you think the hierarchy is?
As far as what?
Planning and how things go. Like you said, you're type A. You were like, you had everything planned out. And if something changes, outside of the couple, clearly the couple is the hierarchy, right? Outside of the couple, who do you think the hierarchy is?
So the way that I kind of operate is, if they have a planner or like a day of coordinator, I always kind of view them as Grand Central Station. They have the schedule, they know what's going on, all the bits and pieces, and I kind of view myself as one of the train conductors. Like, I'm driving the train, I'm the keeper of the timeline is what I call myself. Like, I'm boots on the ground, making sure that we're following that timeline. But the planner and coordinator ultimately, they're the big boss. They're overseeing the whole thing. My job is to take pictures and to keep that schedule moving, to keep us on time so that we can get to all of the check-off points, at the time we're supposed to, so that all the other trains can do their jobs, So when there's not a planner or coordinator, typically the photographer tends to kind of just automatically be that person, which is great for someone like me that is type A. But, it's much different than a planner or coordinator. We're not coordinating all the things like with catering and the DJ arriving and the cake arriving and, all those things. We're more so in charge of the timeline.
Yeah.
And then I always joke that when we get to the reception, I pass the baton to the DJ and I'm like,
For sure.
I'm just here to push a button now.
And that's what I tell people. And I tell my coordinators that, I tell my couples the same thing, is that I don't want to think during the ceremony outside of making sure it sounds great. The microphone sounds good, the music is on point, and all of that. Cocktail hour, I'm just playing music, making sure everybody's feeling good, and get some cocktails in them and all that good stuff. But when it's time for introductions, just give it to me.
Yep.
Take at this point, like you said.
Yep.
Point
I'm like,
click.
we're not going anywhere. We're staying in this room. Like,
Point and
I
click.
can kind of turn my brain off a little bit, and I know DJ's got it under control.
Hopefully we do.
Hopefully. Usually.
Depends on the DJ.
Yes, 100%. We're not going to name names. We can do that off air.
We can do that off air, right?
The blacklist.
Speaking of blacklist, no, we're not going to go. We're not going to go to the.
Oh gosh.
I don't know
Inside
who.
joke.
Inside joke there. If you want to know details, inbox one of us, and we may tell you, we may not. It depends on how we feel that day. But so, what happens is, because this is good for couples to know and future vendors to know, what happens when I want this sunset shot off of 44 with the trucks flying by. I need this shot. This is money shot. But time schedule doesn't allow it. What happens?
It's a conversation with the couple.
Okay.
If, I don't go in with a self-serving attitude, it's about the couple. I obviously can get creative and, I always try to give them at least one like epic, what I call holy shit photo. That couple happened to get two. I try to make sure that I'm getting that at some point, but ultimately the couple decides. If they really want a sunset shot, then we're going to figure out how we can make it happen. We're going to talk to the DJ, the planner, the caterers, whatever. Maybe it's a matter of, let's swap speeches and do speeches after dinner is served so I can, whisk you outside real quick for 10 minutes while they're serving dinner, or, it's a conversation. The couple obviously is the deciding factor. Like, they make the decision if they want it or not. And I've had couples that do both. Some are like, it's fine. Like, we've got plenty today. Like, we're not worried about it. And then there's others that are like, no, we want the sunset shot.
For sure. Right.
So yeah, it's a team effort. We're all on a team, the photographer, the caterer, the venue, the DJ, we're all working together to make that couple's vision and dream and, their perfect day happen. So, we have to work together and, compromise sometimes, with certain things. Either I'm compromising the gorgeous sunset photo, we're compromising the schedule a little bit to push it 15 minutes or, just kind of depends. So.
And it's good to know your vendors, right?
Yes.
Like, especially like,
oh my gosh.
Bryson is going to be here.
Yeah. When I walked in Friday and saw you, I was like, oh.
Because when you work with new people, which I love working with new people,
Yeah.
but sometimes you're like, how is this person for real?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Or do they actually know what they're doing?
Right.
Are
Yeah,
they,
you have to kind of like feel each other
yeah,
out.
you
Like,
got to fill them out a little bit, and things like that. And that's the same way with our photographer that we just had, never met her, but like, she's dope, whatever, but she wasn't somebody I've worked with before. Everybody else, I'm like, okay, cool. But she was dope. But sometimes we don't get that, right?
Yeah.
And so what do you do with that being said? Michelle? What do you do
well,
when you come across a vendor that you've never worked with, or somebody who you have worked with and you were like, damn.
they're on my blacklist?
Yeah.
So I actually had recently, I'm going to try not to give too many details to give it away.
Okay.
Recently had a DJ, and the venue had put together the timeline and had, I guess, let the DJ kind of, decide the timeline for that for the reception portion. And it was a mess. It was awful. And the DJ, she didn't really know, like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to say she didn't know what she was doing, but I have to wonder if she had done weddings.
Oh, wow.
It was one of those like companies that, has multiple people.
Enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
There we go. Right.
So I honestly can't even remember what the schedule was, but it was insane. Like they like served dinner, and then they had the guests like for a solid hour, like just waiting, like not doing anything, while the couple was doing like sparkler photos and this. And I'm like, well, don't you want to open the dance floor? Like, well, after the sparklers, we'll come back and then I can do their first dances. And I'm like, so the guests are literally going to sit there for an hour doing nothing but
Is this before
drink.
dinner or after dinner?
This is after dinner. They had already had an hour for cocktail hour.
Okay.
Then they were going to sit down and eat dinner.
Right.
And then the wedding party was going to go do like sparkler photos, and then they were going to come back and do first dances. And like, it was just like, I was like, okay, I know this isn't my job, and I know that I need to stay in my lane, but we're changing this timeline.
Now.
And the DJ, she understood, like she was fine. Me and the venue coordinator, like we worked it out, but we completely changed it. Because it's better for the couple that way. Their guests are having a good time.
Yeah.
If they're sitting there doing nothing, they're going to start leaving.
Yes.
Or they're going to start drinking heavily.
Yes.
Both are not what you want.
Yes.
So, we kind of rearranged it to where, they had dinner. Then we did the first dances and speeches like you normally do. And then I took them out for sparkler photos, while the dance floor was open and people were having a good time. Like, they don't need to wait on you for that. Like... So yeah, that was one of the few times that I felt that I needed to step in to make it happen.
Gotcha. And then especially if you're on a time schedule, right?
Right.
Like, look, I'm only scheduled until 10 o'clock or whatever the case may be, and it's 8:30, 9 o'clock, and I'm not going to get any dance floor pictures, or whatever
and like
the case may be.
The couple may not know any better, they're trusting us because we have experience to do the best thing. So they may have seen this schedule that this DJ put together and been like, okay, yeah, if that's what you do, then let's do it. So yeah, they rely on us, and I saw that, and I knew that I couldn't let that happen.
And when people don't have a coordinator, I have them like, okay, this is traditionally what you can do, which is, the same type of deal, maybe try to get a first dance and cake out the way, if nothing else, and then dinner. And then if you're going to dance with your parents and whatever, blah, 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 right? At least try to get those out the way.
Right.
I try to, I don't encourage walking around and greeting all your people unless you're going to do like a photo dash, right? And I always say, talk to your wedding photographer.
Yes, I have feelings about that.
Talk to your photographer first before you decide you want to do that. Make sure they're cool with it and they have a second shooter or whatever the case may be.
And that goes back to having those conversations beforehand, like talking about all that stuff, and not us having a timeline that says you want a photo with every table and then nobody knows how that's happening. Yeah, it's so actually one of the things that I kind of mentioned earlier about the couple having dinner together privately during cocktail hour, what that also allows them to do is, while everybody else is sat down and eating dinner, they can go table to table to say thank you and hello and that kind of thing, and you're not eating into any part of the timeline. Receiving lines, I mean, they're very old school. I hate them with a passion, personally. They just take up so much time. I mean, parents, I think, usually are the ones that like want to like stand at the end of the church as everybody's leaving and say hello. But I always tell my couples, like, unless you're going to stand here for 45 minutes and say hello to everybody, you need to go hide. Like, you need to go because we got to do photos.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, you know, some people, they want to, you know, make sure that they're saying hello to everyone and thanking them for coming and, you know, that kind of thing. So there's ways to do it without like compromising an hour of your already tight day, you know? So, yeah.
So what's one of the biggest things that you encourage couples that they, you know, could do, they should be doing on their wedding day?
I would say try to spend as much time together and with your people as you can. So it kind of goes back to that first look. I always highly encourage doing it so that you have the time. You know, I have the time to take the photos that I know I can take and give you, you know, what you saw on my website and, you know, all the things we talked about. I want to be able to deliver that to you. So it gives me the time to create that, but then it also gives you the time to really soak in that, like, hey, this is our wedding. Like, you know, because it's over so fast.
It goes quick.
The end of even this weekend, you know, it was 15 hours on Saturday. And I went home and I was like, that was really fast.
Yeah,
like, I couldn't believe like, so, you know, for the bride and groom, especially, you know, it's all of a sudden it's just over. And they're like, oh, we spent all this time and money planning this and now it's done. Which is another reason my job and videographers' jobs is so important, because they get to relive all of that and they get to see all the things they didn't see and, you know, that kind of thing. So, yeah, I would say, you know, just spend as much time together and remember why you're there. Like, the whole purpose of the day is because you're coming together and getting married. So, you know, it's easy to let it turn into, okay, this is the schedule. We got to do this. We got to do that. Like, let us handle that. You enjoy yourselves. Soak it in, be with your people, have fun, like hire trusted people that you know will get you from A to B. Yeah,
that is awesome. And because, you know, there was a point in time when Michelle did weddings for $300 and she got somebody, you know, was so awesome to take you underneath their wing, right? Yeah. What do you encourage other, you know, those who want to get into this same field of being a wedding photographer?
I would say, you know, like I said, we all have that similar story of how we stumbled into it, whether it's doing a friend's wedding for $300 or, you know, just however it happens. You know, if it's something that you're interested in doing, I would say just do some research and do it the right way. You know, if you've never shot a wedding before, you have a brand new camera that you don't really 100% know how to use yet, you know, maybe you shouldn't be photographing a wedding by yourself. Like, you have to remember that weddings are like a once, maybe twice in a lifetime.
3.
Yeah. Like,
not for me.
Usually by 3, they're not doing the whole thing anymore, but
you'd be surprised.
Yeah, that's true.
Surprised.
That's true. That's very true. But you know, it's not something that can be redone, you know, like back to my days in the Walgreens photo lab. You know, when they go to Disney and one of those rolls of film, you know, got stuck in the machine or, you know, got exposed somehow while they were traveling, like, you don't get to go back and redo that. Like, I mean, sure, you could, you know, get dressed up again and do portraits and, you know, that kind of stuff, but it's not the same, you know, like you can't bring grandma back to do these family photos and you can't, you know, like it's just, you have to understand the weight of the job you're taking on. You know, it's not just a family portrait session that can easily be rescheduled or redone or, you know, you really have to be prepared, you know, and doing it the right way means, you know, having backup equipment. I won't shoot a wedding by myself. I can, but I won't. I personally don't think that I can effectively capture a wedding the way it should be with just myself. You know, I'm going to be sacrificing something. If I'm with the bride, I'm sacrificing photos of the groom. If I'm with the groom, you know, if I'm with the couple, I'm not getting grandma, you know, busting a move on the dance floor, you know, like, but it's also a built-in backup. If I, you know, trip and fall and smash my camera on the ground, knock on wood, you know, just things like that. Like, you have to really think about what it is you're doing. Like, photographer, you know, everybody's a photographer now. Like I said, we got cameras in our pockets. People buy a camera and they think they're a photographer, which is fine. We all start somewhere, and that's how you kind of get into it. But people see weddings and they're like, oh, weddings are where the money is. Well, there's a reason that weddings are where the money is. Like the seriousness and, like I said, the weight of that job, and like, the amount of equipment. Like I have 3 camera bodies. I have, I think, 12 batteries. You have to have all of this stuff, because if a card just all of a sudden gets corrupted and stops working, I got to swap them out. My battery dies, I got to swap it out. I drop my camera and I break it, I got to go grab that third body to have, I'm not going to sacrifice that couple's day because I was unprepared. So people that are coming in, just really think about what you're doing.
For sure.
Think about the worst case scenario and how you would have that conversation with that couple. And if that's not a conversation you want to have, don't do it.
Don't do it.
Find somebody, Abby was gracious enough to take me under her wing, and I made a promise that I would do the same. So I, have several people that will reach out to me with questions or need advice or, things like that. I have one photographer that she's kind of building her business, and actually, her, Lena.
Lena, yeah.
Yeah.
Lena's great. Yeah.
I've kind of taken her under my wing, and,
good.
She's second shot for me. And, so somebody did it for me. So I want to make sure I'm paying that forward, because it only makes us better. Like if you're learning from someone that is doing it the quote unquote right way and understands, and a lot of these photographers, as I call them, if they're only charging, half of what I'm charging to a couple, that looks great. Like, oh my gosh, they got pretty pictures. Like, ultimately we're all doing the same thing. We have different styles, sure, but we're all getting the same stuff. They're half my price. Well, there's a reason they're half my price,
Well, now.
So me taking somebody in and teaching them, this is why we charge what we charge. This is why you should be charging what you're charging. Because if you're, only say, oh yeah, I'm only $1,000 for a wedding, and you get 2 photographers and we're here all day and we're doing all this, and what couple's not going to be like, oh my God, that's great, because I just talked to Michelle and she's like $4,000, and then the wedding comes and you hear these horror stories. I hear them at every wedding. A bridesmaid or a cousin or somebody comes up and makes a comment about oh my gosh, this is so great. My wedding, our photographer took 8 months to give us our photos and half of them were crap. Or we never heard from our photographer again. Or something happened and they lost all of our photos. Those are the people, not that doesn't happen. It has happened to me, unfortunately. But because I had backups and things in place, it was minimized as much as it could be.
Sure.
Whereas, Uncle Joe Schmo with the camera may not have that. So, long story short, I kind of got on a tangent there. You can tell I'm passionate about it.
And I love it.
Anybody that's wanting to become a wedding photographer, just know what you're getting into, the seriousness of what it is you're capturing. It's not just, taking cute pictures of your dog at home, and make sure that you are taking care of your couple the best way you can, because nobody wants to have that conversation, a few weeks after the wedding where you're like, yeah, so all that money you spent, I don't have anything. Yeah.
Michelle, this is, I think I don't even know if we even touched the tip of the iceberg.
I know. I feel like we could sit here and talk for hours and hours and hours.
I know. It's definitely a part 2 coming. I guarantee, because we didn't even get in and talk about your wedding plans, your the things that you're trying to do for the wedding community.
Yeah.
We didn't even get a chance to talk about that.
Yeah.
But we
have
had
to come back for that.
Great conversation. And I think couples and potential wedding vendors is going to have a great, inspiration from this conversation.
Yeah,
and
good. And I'm
really
an open door,
through.
For couples, for other vendors, photographers. Like I said, somebody did it for me, so I'm not hoarding any knowledge. You got a question, ask me. My couples, we kind of talked about it beforehand. I call myself your wedding wing woman.
Wedding wing woman.
I have a jacket and everything. It's awesome. This is my world. This, this is what we do. We're submersed in it. We know what's going on, kind of what the trends are, what's typically how people do things. I'm not going to be like, oh no, I'm just here to take pictures. Like, I can't tell you anything. Like, I love to be a resource. You know, if you have questions about, you know, like what do people typically do for XYZ, or, you know, I've had brides that have texted me at like 10 o'clock at night, like, which shade of orange do you think is better for the arbor? Like this dark one or this light? Like sometimes they just need somebody, you know, like your wedding planning crew is excited.
Yeah.
But at one point they're going to be like, okay, can we talk about something that's not the wedding just for a few minutes? That's when I say, call Michelle. Like, I love talking about this stuff. I love weddings so much. Like, that's what I'm here for. Like, yeah. So it's sharing all of that knowledge with the couples. Because like I said before, they don't know what they don't know. You know, you plan a wedding, nobody teaches you how to do it. Like, you're literally just diving in, and they usually get the venue booked, and then they start looking into like photographers and, you know, those ones that you should be booking early. And that's when they kind of have the deer in the headlights look like, oh my God, this is so much. Like, how much does that photographer charge? How much are flowers? Like, you know, they start seeing that reality. And the benefit of being one of those vendors that gets hired first, typically, I'm there to grab their hand and be like, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay.
And that's a beautiful thing when you're working with professionals, right?
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I encourage when I ask, one of the first things I ask them, do you have, you know, what vendors do you have?
Oh yeah, I do the same thing.
Sometimes when I'm actually found out, which happens not that many times a year, and it's like, oh, you're the first person we reached out to outside of our venue. And I'm like, okay,
isn't that
great.
like the best feeling?
Oh, it's great. So your budget is for me. No, I'm joking. But then that's when I'm like, okay, these are the professionals you need to look at. And then you go down your non-blacklist, let's put it that way. But, so like I said, definitely part 2 coming.
Yes, for sure.
Everybody needs to reach out to you some type of way. How can they reach out to you?
So you can find my website is michellejphotography.com. Kept it easy. My social media is Michelle Jahns Photography, and Jahns is with an A, not an O.
Jahns.
Yes. It's very complicated for people for some reason, which is why my website is michellejphotography.com. And you can message me through any of those. You can email me directly through the website, get me on social media. Like I said, I'm an open door. I love what I do. So anybody that, you know, is willing to trust such a huge moment in their life with me, like, I don't even have words for it. You know, like I'm one of the few people on this planet that gets to do what they love. And I do not take that lightly.
Guaranteed part 2 coming.
Yes.
Part 2.
Yeah, I got a whole second business to talk about.
Right. Like I said, we didn't even dive into everything else, but this conversation was awesome. And Michelle, I definitely appreciate you for stopping by.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, for sure. This is just beginning for our wedding community.
Yes.
I feel like this is what we need.
Yes.
Well, not only for vendors, but also for couples. And they just a platform for everybody to go to, right?
Yeah, this is exactly the type of thing that I'm trying to do with said second venture.
Right. Exactly.
So
it's about the community. It's about,
exactly.
You know, and all of that family.
St. Louis is so great. Like, we have such a great wedding vendor community already.
I agree.
We need to get it out there and let people know, like, hey, ask us questions. Like, you know, sure, there's 8,000 photographers, but like, what's one more? Like, there's people for everyone, you know?
Exactly. So thank you, Michelle, once again. And thank y'all for tuning in to another episode of Beats and Vows right here on B District Radio. We look forward to seeing you again. Until the next time, between time, music is life. Life is music. We out.